Shadow Crew podcast.
I could never tell what country he was from in that movie. Blood Sport, where he like looks at the camp.
Little Irish dude walking around doesn't sound like that's going to go too well.
Volume 2, the best spaceships of all time.
He-Man's power suit.
It does come with its own castle.
And he dies in the first one.
Oh no, sir. He's in the entire film. Sit back, get your popcorn, and enjoy your note-taking on that epic film.
Well, look at that. We're upgrading the intro. Every week we come up with new introductions, and as you can tell, we record from a professional studio every week. You hear the backdrop. Welcome to the Shadow Knows Network, the Shadow Cruise podcast. Again, we are excited to be here with you this evening, wherever you are all listening on the live stream multicast. Follow us on various socials, Shadow Knows Network. But we stream live every Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific time. So thanks for tuning in. I'm excited to jump into a variety of different topics this evening. Mr. Chet Maddox, the fourth person usually in the studio, is not with us this evening. I'm sure he's on some crazy secret assignment of some type, but we're looking forward to hopefully bringing him back next week. But without further ado, a couple things. First, we're going to talk a little bit about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire trailer that was released this past week. Are we excited? Are we not? We're going to get into that. In addition, there was a pretty interesting thing going on with the world of comic books. In the past couple of podcasts, we've talked a bit about the long-term effects of how people view content and the comic book industry as a whole, but there might be a saving grace, and that is the world of manga. And so the US comic book versus manga market. And then last but not least, our best of, I will say we were going to start with the best comic book film of all time and narrow it down to one. But in discussions earlier this afternoon on the agenda, we couldn't agree on the 32 in the bracket. So part one of this happens this evening, and we're going to debate, of all of the comic book films of all time, which 32 actually belong in the bracket, which ones belong in the playoffs, and then next week, even more of a heated debate to narrow it down to one. So super excited about all of that. Please subscribe, follow the channel. But some unfortunate news that broke a couple of hours ago, and that is the unfortunate passing of Carl Weathers, the legendary actor from the 80s, 90s, and most recently of the Mandalorian fame, Mando, right? Like that, like his name is synonymous with that franchise now. A big loss for the film entertainment industry. Lots of legendary characters, Apollo Creed, and what was in Predator? What was the name? What was his name?
Dylan, Dylan. Son of a bitch.
Dylan. A variety of other different action roles. Chubbs,
Adam Sandler's.
And then one thing that Mr. Storm called out, and that was Action Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
From the 80s. So obviously it's a sad time, but thoughts on Carl Weathers and his career and legacy in Hollywood?
Well, like I said, Dr. Brentley and I was going over this, and my uncle, who's recently my eldest uncle who passed away, he was a Detroit officer for 30 years. And whenever I used to watch any of the films when you see like, you know, RoboCop or Axel Foley from Beverly Hills Cop or even Action Jackson, they were all Detroit officers. You mostly always saw officers from New York or from Los Angeles or even Miami. So whenever I saw those, I always idolized that that was his life and everything. And before he passed, he came out here and I told him, I said, well, you know, I'm sure when you guys have posters of all these characters, and he had never seen any of these movies. So we had sat down for an afternoon and we watched, like I said again, Action Jackson, RoboCop, and Beverly Hills Cop. And he was blown away. He was like, wow, nephew, I wish I would have saw those back in the days. And it's just one of those aspects where, you know, Carl Weathers was like big because of the fact is that from Rocky to Predator to Action Jackson, you know, when I was coming up, he was a guy that looked like me that was on the screen doing things bigger than life. And I got one of my also older cousins was a stunt double for Action Jackson, which was very huge. He was also on a show that was called That's Incredible, where he jumped off a building and did something. You know, we don't talk about that one too much, but these were the aspects that he was just an integral part of my life coming up. And it was so nice to see him transition at the end where younger fans know him from like now the Mandalorian series. And now he has action figures and all these kind of things. So, you know, it's a sad day, but you know, when you're in Star Wars, you never really kind of forgotten about, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually got to meet him once. He came into our studio to record some voiceover. I forget what it was, but he did some ad for something. It was like a step above, you know, like the reverse mortgages, but it was one of those kind of things. But I had to record him, but it was really cool just to get to meet him.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about how he made the Rocky franchise. And heck, they've made another franchise based off the Apollo Creed with Michael B. Jordan. That should tell you how legendary and iconic that character was. And obviously, very excited that at least the newer generation got to see Carl Weathers in The Mandalorian exposed to a new audience. So very unfortunate timing. You know, rest in peace, Carl Weathers, but thanks for everything you did in Hollywood and some of our most enjoyable films you were a part of. Predators, one of my top, you know, 20 films of all time. So unfortunate how he went out in that movie, but
yeah, of course, man.
No, not to give any spoilers, but almost everyone did except for the man. So any last thoughts on Mr. Carl Weathers?
No, man. Like I think you said it all. You know, just thank him for all the beautiful work that he's done. It's sad that we won't see him do anything else.
Yep.
Yeah, and still fairly young too. I mean, he looked great on screen. I don't know if there was anything going on, but you know, 76 is really not that old, especially nowadays.
Yeah. Well, rest in peace, Carl Weathers. In other news, as we talked about, lots of trailers hitting the scene, and one in particular is the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire trailer. So thoughts on the trailer? Did you all enjoy the last film? I mean, obviously, they are trying to rejuvenate the franchise after the all-female cast of Ghostbusters that didn't go very well. But Bill Murray, you know, trying to come back in that the same character that was featured in the trailer. So what are your thoughts on this? Excited? Is it, hey, should have left it alone?
I didn't like Afterlife. The problem, I think, it wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't Ghostbusters. It wasn't a comedy. It was more of a, you know, light drama with some paranormal stuff and a little bit of comedy. But it went away from what made the first two, the first one in particular, so fantastic. Is it was just a flat out comedy and horror aspects. And the horror they didn't shy away from either. There was some scary stuff. The librarian is kind of goofy at the beginning, but it's scary. You know. and they just walked away from it. I will say though that Frozen Empire looked better to me, a lot better. It looked like, Bill Murray coming in's got some jokes, and probably only coming in towards the end, but that's what I expect in this. But yeah, it actually looked pretty cool, and getting back to a little bit more of like a bigger horror threat and throw in some comedy.
Seeing, I know we've discussed about this a couple of times. Yeah, Afterlife, I did not like. Because it's just not technically Ghostbusters. It's its own kind of thing, and I think that sometimes it's more of like you threw Stranger Things into Ghostbusters, and I think they're trying to get like the younger audience involved in it. Yet, I always felt like if you were just going to you should just reboot it, the original Ghostbusters, recasted everyone, and start showing us like certain aspects of the characters of their journey that we never got to see. And I think the first film really got you got 10 to 12 to 13-year-olds riding around driving cars and using proton accelerators and everything else like that. Absolutely nothing about that seemed like it was. You can't really get into the humor and some of the raunchiness that the first couple of films were. It was right on the level of so provocative that it worked. And now you've kidded it down. It kind of reminds me of, there was the animated the real Ghostbusters, and then years later they did like a new age version called the Extreme Ghostbusters, and it just wasn't the same type of vibe. Well, the same thing happens for this. I like I said, some of this stuff looked good, but I'm like, you've got kids in this movie. You're presenting it to extremely PG audience, whether or PG-13. I just think, like I said again, with Ghostbusters, the essence of the film were those four great actors, their sense of humor, the provocativeness that they had on screen, and just the all-out calamity. I don't think you're bringing that back into. I think you're making something completely different than what the first couple of films were. So I was a little disheartened when I saw Afterlife, and the same thing with this is I don't think we're going to ever get to see the actual Ghostbusters again with the four original heroes and the humor and everything else that made it such a hit for '84.
Yeah, I think I tie it back, like when you're bringing back such a legendary movie from the '80s. I think it's very difficult to bring it back in a way that feels very much like the film from the '80s, but relevant today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that was pretty interesting is how they did the Karate Kid TV series, which I thought was really cool. And that is, they took basically Johnny and they showed kind of what happened after the fact in his life now. And they probably had an opportunity, when they wrote Afterlife, and I don't know if Bill Murray was ever interested, of I would love to see Bill Murray, what transpired. They could have started there, and then maybe organically folded in some newer characters. But to focus on new and then sprinkle in old is never really a great recipe for success.
No,
right? It just never is. Like Indiana Jones, right? To bring that. So Harrison Ford is always going to be Julian. Dr. Brantley, you're the expert on this, right? But if you brought in someone new and then brought in Harrison Ford later, it just feels very.
You couldn't call it Indiana Jones.
But that's what I'm saying. You can't call it Ghostbusters without Bill Murray, right? And then you got Aykroyd, right? I think that's the miss. But to your point, I think the trailer is very exciting, and I'm hopefully it's good. Because I like the concept, I like the franchise, but I think sometimes they overthink it, and it doesn't have to be too crazy. Ghostbusters was simple, and it was advanced for its time in terms of some of the visual effects. But at the end of the day, it was a stupid comedy with silly writing. And then you put ghost in it. That's what made it successful.
And
It was like
I
an
don't
SN.
think
It was like an SL skit with a big budget.
exactly.
There was a
And,
bunch of comedy skits, and
Mhm.
in the middle of it, there's one major story.
Yep.
But there was all these little bits that they had in, and there was none of that kind of stuff.
No, and I think they did a very good job. And the fact is that the Ghostbusters were just four regular looking dudes. They weren't like, it wasn't like, you assembled Arnold Schwarzenegger and big action stars. These guys were just regular guys out there doing it. And that's, I think, why it gave an everyman's feel to the film, because it looked like the general audience that was going to the films. Like, all right, I just need a proton pack on my back and I can do this. And I just think and I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to push this towards children and everything. And I think it would have just been simplified if they would have done two films. One that was dealing with this, and then one that you show the actual ghost, recast them, show the Ghostbusters and what they did before this scenario, because there's so much hidden things between let's say 40 years now, between the first film and this one, that and we only really got to see like two films from the original cast. So it would be interesting to see that, but I understand what they're doing. They're gonna, the one thing I give Sony credit, or Columbia the credit, they're gonna beat this into the ground. They're gonna do it to the point where people don't want to see this anymore, and then they'll move on to something else, because that's what they do. They don't really run franchises well. They run them into the ground. So we're going to see how the second film is going to go, and then we'll see when they do a third film how well this is going to go.
Now, I did find this very interesting because I looked up the box office for these movies, right? So the first Ghostbusters in 1984, $295 million. Ghostbusters 2, 1989, 215.
That's pretty good.
Now, 40 years later, or 30 something years later, right? Afterlife only made 204 million. And that's, so in all that time, you can't even adjust it for inflation, beat this thing. I mean, that's not good. That's, and also shows how big of hits both of those movies were.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
And then, funnily enough, the Ghostbusters with all women made 229. So it actually made more money than Afterlife. But they just say, oh no, we're not doing this because it had a backlash. But people went and saw it. It made money.
Yeah. Yeah, the Ghostbusters name is pretty powerful. So I hope it does well. We'll see. But the trailer is definitely promising. And I think I want to see how much Bill Murray's in the film. That's what I'm curious. No cameos, like 10 minutes, shows up and disappears. So, yeah. This is the Shadow Crew podcast. Like, subscribe. We stream every Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Multicast, multi-stream. Follow us on the Shadow Knows Network on multiple social media platforms. Like, subscribe, comment. We're here every evening. We're going to jump into our next topic, and that is the world of comic books versus the manga market. I think we've talked about this on previous casts, but the Asian influence with manga and anime and animation, and this is something over the past 10 years that has really revolutionized the industry. Young kids are walking around with various anime and manga characters, and books are very prevalent in comic book stores and Barnes and Noble. There was a thought of like what the future is for comic books in general. We had a big discussion as being comic book fans and readers of the past. But it looks like maybe manga could be the saving grace for the comic book industry. I know that Chet just picked up a book recently, and that was like some like Batman Joker manga. And it was like I don't know, I think he shared it was like Joker had a baby, like gave birth to Bruce Wayne, and was raised some crazy concepts. But here you go, one of many titles in the DC universe that's manga driven. So what do you think about this? Is this like the future? I mean, manga is exploding. Is this where we're shifting in comic books?
Well, again, I think this whole thing was brought up due to us this week seeing that like a manga digital division had earned $675 million. And that's just digital. So the one thing that manga has done extremely well is they've mastered not only, the print, but they've mastered the digital. And I know that the American market, especially some of the top companies here, the Marvel, the DCs, the Images, and all the rest, they relied on Comicology and a couple other levels, but they really hadn't made the push. There was a lot of pushback because they wanted to still have in the hands of retailers and situations instead of embracing it. They had a moment where they could have embraced it, they didn't. And I think Manga's done a very good job when it comes to the level of technology. I think also they've gotten the beat on their points. Look, I'm looking at some of these. There's a manga that's Blue Lock that in the 2013 or 2023 sold 10 million copies. That's 10 million copies of a book. Here, I just, last week we were talking about the Thundercats that did 171,000 copies, and people were jumping up for joy. Todd McFarlane, I think Spawn 300 did, if I'm not mistaken, I may get these numbers wrong on this one, but I believe that it was like 150, So, like, these were numbers that they're doing in manga that we were doing in the 1990s at the height of success. They would cancel books if you were hitting 171,000.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these, like I'm looking at there's 10 on the books. There's a comic called Kingdom, and it sold 3 million copies, a manga. Whatever these guys are doing, the US market needs to really start looking at that and start taking this, because this is not a fad anymore. At first it was and one thing that I've noticed too, which I'll just bring this up as well, we don't do a good job in America keeping track of records and numbers and situations like that. Because when I started doing research this week, and I believe there's a YouTuber, Comics by Perch, that I listen to a lot, and he's stressed that we're not taking the numbers and we're not putting those out and making it as transparent. And
because
so
they're so low.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but how do you get avoiding the truth does not help anything. If you were saying the numbers, first of all, look, manga as big as they are, and they move into anime and all the rest of the things, they have a machine behind them. Most of our comic book companies, the major ones, are owned by conglomerates. You've got Warner Discovery, and you've got Disney. And I can't tell you how many times, I've never seen in a business model where their whole thing was to just fail. We're not going to advertise this as much. We're not going to draw as much attention. And we're just going to pray that this does well. I've never seen that done in business ever. Normally your whole thing is, how do you maximize this? How are the movies doing this amount? How aren't the books doing this amount? This is what happened now over in Japan and Korea and mostly Asia. They take that into seriousness. The Shogun Jump book, they print a black and white version that's a cheaper version of it on newsprint. And then they have a collected edition that if you're a person that wants the colors and everything else, you can purchase that. They move it into, they're all over advertisement over there. They're approaching this like a business. We are still in America treating this like a hobby. We're still running 1960s, information and executives from 1960s. And we're not utilizing the technology and the funding and just the common sense of running business like we should. So, yeah, you're going to get 10 million copies. This is worldwide, too. 171 was Thundercats in America. I don't know how these companies are keeping their lights on with those kind of numbers, especially when they were coming from the Jim Lees, the Todd McFarlanes. They were selling millions of copies. I don't know how you sit back and you pat yourselves on the back now, barely able to do anything over 200,000 copies.
Yeah, I don't. have much to add just because I never got into manga. About the closest thing, like an American, actually probably Canadian manga that I read was Scott Pilgrim. And, but I loved it, and I got all the different volumes because it was a big story, almost like a graphic novel, but on cheap paper, but told your whole story, and it continued on, and reasonably priced for the amount of content you got compared to just a regular 22-page book that was almost the same price. It's like, that's stupid.
Well, they're printing on, look, there's smaller formats. They're printing on different, lesser paper. And, they're really utilizing, look, if you're selling things to individuals that you're putting at an age bracket, we're not trying to sell things to 30 and 40-year-olds because, the trends are you want to sell between 15 to 25. Well, you've got to make that affordable. $4.99 a book, it's not affordable. You're going to 28 pages when I can go spend $10 and get something that's got 200 pages. What's going to make the sense, And I just think the practices that we're doing is like, look, if the American market really wants to survive, they're going to stop doing things. And look, we're placing people at the top of these companies that are the same kind of like regurgitated the industry experts. We've got Jim Lee running DC Comics. He's been in comics since the 80s. So who's the 20-some-year-old that's running technology? Let's be honest, Mark Zuckerberg made money because he basically created Facebook when older people were still using telephones. Where are the younger, innovative individuals that's coming in and changing the industry, and us basically pushing out these guys that have been running the same kind of thing for 30 years? It just doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yep. I think we talked about this in a couple of casts, but I think it comes down to price 100%. It does come down, but we did I remember I did some estimates of like how much a comic book cost versus how much many volumes of manga would cost. 2, it's trendy. It's hot. I don't think anybody, if you're on a train, you're at school, if you're reading a comic book, I don't know if anybody's coming and going, are you reading a Spider-Man like, I don't think that's cool. But if you're reading some kind of cool, manga book that's got, some weird Spider-Man looking, like Asian influenced, interesting art, somebody's going to inquire about it. I think that's 2. And then I think 3 is fresh ideas, different writing, creative ideas that we've said that it's been a bit stale in comics and in Hollywood in general. And I think those 3 things speak to interest in growth and more revenue. And it's a good thing if comic books do continue to fold over into the comic book realm. But hopefully there are still comic books in comic shops. But I think it's a good thing. It's just super fascinating that it's such a disparity between the two right now. And comic books are just not, comic book movies and TVs are still relevant, but comic books, again, the younger generation, we want to encourage to get them back into that. And right now it's more toys, collectibles, digital card games, not like comic books right now. So,
but like I said, this discussion right here is the same discussion that DC, Marvel, there needs to be a round table of all of them there. And they look and they see these mega numbers and they're like, well, maybe because any other business would go out and get those individuals. If you had somebody selling more cards, you go and you get somebody from that actual other company to come in. Maybe they should get some people from Manga to come over into some of these American companies and start transcending some of that so they can actually get that. Maybe if they didn't have the standard standalone $4.99 books, maybe if they did volumes of stuff and change a little bit, maybe they would sell a little better, start using different ideas.
I agree. Well, we'll stay tuned to see what the next few years looks like in that industry. But it is time to move on to the biggest topic of the evening, and that is, again, the best of series, and we started with this idea of narrowing down to the number one comic book film of all time. For those of you who haven't checked out last week's episode 24 of the Shadow Crew podcast, we did interesting bracket challenge to narrow down the best sidekick of all time. Quite interesting that another much bigger online media company decided to do a similar poll. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not. It's just very coincidental. But I won't give away any spoilers, but take a look at that on our channel and find out who we voted as the best sidekick of all time. You might be surprised, but this week it is the best comic book film of all time. But before we get to the bracket challenge, we got to narrow down to the 32 teams, 32 in a bracket challenge films. And so we are going to begin this journey. There was a lot of debate back and forth off the air. I think it's going to be a pretty complicated task because we're going to have to give away. So we're going to have to say bye-bye to some of our favorites personally. But please drop a comment if we missed any, if you think we're way off base. But let's begin, shall we?
So,
and I'm going to open up our presentation so we can log it in our draft format. You know, as a writing team would typically do, and we will start.
Well, actually, here's the funny thing. I just got the limousine riding, champagne drinking.
Ric Flair? Wait, Ric Flair is joining the podcast?
Unfortunately not.
I guess he heard us talk about his Woo Chews, his edibles. And
Mr. Chad Maddox's plane must have just jumped down the... You know, this is what happens when you fly private. You know, it's like, this is what happens when you have this... You know, he could just pop on any other time and everything like that because he's like turbulence and everything. But he's going to pop on because I knew that this was going to be refreshing. So it'd be interesting to see him... in his quotes, but it just cracks me up how he's the jet setter, Mr. Chad Maddox. You know, rest of us, you know, hey, you know, you see our studio layouts and then you see his, and then you wonder, you know, where all the money from the Shadow Network's going.
Well, while we wait for Mr. Maddox to join, let's begin our journey. I think the proper way to do it would be Dr. Brantley. I guess you can read off this extensive list of comic book films, and we could either say, nay, not even bother, no way it's ever making a 32, let alone a top 50, or 100% it should be a 32, or let's
Maybe.
put it on here and have a debate.
All right.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
So the first one, now the very first one is Two Guns, but I'm going to say that ain't anywhere on this list. Don't bother.
No, it's not making it.
not
You scratch that one off the list.
30 Days of Night. And
not in my 32.
It's not going to be in the 32, but not a terrible movie. And they did some cool effects with the vampires too.
It's probably the top 75, I would say. But you know, yeah, not the top.
Is that the only Steve Niles book that ever got to the big screen? I think so.
I think it was. Yeah,
I think that's the only one that made it.
Now you would think that they would do something like Criminal Macabre, or you know, it's like that would be an easy one and low budget to do. But 300. This is definitely
that definitely goes in the top.
That's going to be in the 32.
That's going to be in the 32.
300 Rise of an Empire, not so much.
No. Fallen Empire, they should have called
it. Now, this is something we should talk about because this is what we ran into with our list that we started with is, do we only have one representative of sort of like those films like a Batman, right? It's like, do you only choose one from those early ones, maybe a Nolan, or is there only like one Batman to represent all of Batman films?
I think, my opinion, it could be swayed. if it was a top 32 film, if it happened to be all the Avengers movies, they get the place on the list. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I would have to agree on that one too, man, because it would be hard for me to pick between 89 and then The Dark Knight, and I'm like, shit,
Okay. So next on our list, we're getting to the A's, Aliens versus Predator.
Yeah.
Started as a comic book.
Yeah, no.
That's not going to make it.
No.
American Splendor. Now, it was a good movie.
It's a good movie. I don't think the top 32. I do think it's the top 50, but I don't think it's the top 32, bro.
Yeah.
He's going to have a hard time against, Blade, people like that. But still, Harvey Picard doing good work there. All right. Ant-Man.
Now, I know we had a debate. I think that's the best of the Ant-Man films.
Definitely.
Yes.
And I thought it captured the essence of like a very humorous, light-hearted introduction to Ant-Man, who was influential post that movie in a variety of different MCU storylines. So it may come down to not being on the 32, but I think it's worth a discussion in terms of Marvel movies. But you two could outnumber me here.
I think it's on the maybe list.
I think it's for me. I think it's in the top 75 of all.
What we have here,
Mr. Trendsetter. How you doing tonight, Mr. Chad Maddox? Okay, well, he probably doesn't have his mic on yet.
Dialing in from Mars. Earth to Chet. Can you hear me? Over.
I do hear you.
We're talking about Ant-Man. Does Ant-Man deserve a place in the top 32 comic book films of all time? Okay.
Not at all.
Well, you might be outnumbered on this one, Chris.
Yeah,
all right.
Okay. Not at all.
All right.
Sorry about that. I got lost in my mansion. So
okay.
I'm back.
We were debating that the private plane hadn't hit the tarmac yet. So.
Yeah, well that as well, but I didn't want to talk about that.
Next up, we have Aquaman.
No, not 32.
The top
the first one was all right.
I'm not saying it wasn't bad, but I'm thinking 32 here.
Okay. So I'm guessing that Art School Confidential's way off that list.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into the Avengers.
See,
Number 1, definitely.
Yeah, they're definitely.
And then Infinity War, definitely. And probably Endgame, definitely. I would put on at least the maybe list, but one of those is going up there.
I say you probably those 3 Avenger movies are making it, man.
Ultron, not so much.
No. Ultron is not even in the top 100 for me, man.
That Ultron was a little lackluster.
Yeah, it was.
And I say that with respect.
I think Ultron it was a cool he was a cool character, cool villain, but the movie itself was not at the same level of these 3.
It's kind of like the same thing with the whole aspect of Ant-Man 3. The villain just, we were really thinking about Kang being this big villain in the comic books, and it just didn't translate well over onto the screen. So
Quantumania is not even in the top 500 comic book films of all time.
And there aren't even that many.
That's my point exactly.
Well, this one's not on that list either. It's probably closer down there. Barbed Wire.
Oh, that's top. That's like top 3. You know how many like people got the barbed wire tattoo on them when that movie came out.
Did they see the movie first?
Unfortunately, I think they did.
Yeah, no.
I actually saw that in a theater.
Oh, geez.
I'm sorry.
I was one of the 3 people.
Oh, I was too.
He was
so good.
It's one other
you
person.
two and Tommy Lee. Okay.
So now we're into Batmans.
Okay.
Ooh,
Many,
all right.
many Batmans. Batman Returns, Batman Mask of Phantasm, Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, Lego Batman, which a lot of people sleep on. I think it's probably one of the best Batman movies. And Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice.
I mean,
And the Batman.
Dark Knight is up there.
Dark
For me.
Knight.
Yes.
I mean, that's an easy one. That's
Yeah.
an easy one.
Like that's a Batman that like the launch. I remember when that was launching, all the like haha stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
And that movie like held up with its hype.
I'm gonna
And
say
beyond.
Batman '89 has to be
Yeah,
on here.
And
most definitely.
I actually like Batman Returns more than that first one
Wow.
as
Yeah,
a movie.
Let's put it like this. That's a minority scenario because the 89 Batman, I just saw something the other day about the marketing campaign, and like that was probably essentially like the biggest film I think of like our youth, that everybody I knew from like age 5 to 80 saw that movie, man.
Yeah, I saw that when I was little, and then I got slapped in the mouth by my dad because I repeated like the line "Jesus Christ, who are you?" My dad was like, "Nope," and I was like, oh, I won't say that again. But
there you go.
Yeah. Plus, it also has like some of the most classic like Lego builds. Is like the '89 Batmobile and the Batwing.
And the funny thing about that too is that I think '89 and The Dark Knight seem to be two of the better films, but both of them still had quintessentially the best actors as Joker to ever do it. So you got to give credit to that, man.
I think that there's definitely some other Batmans that potentially could be here, but I think it's a clear cut. These two to me stand out above the rest.
I would say as a maybe Mask of Phantasm, because obviously it also had the third greatest Joker of all time, Mark Hamill, in it. And I saw that in the theater, and it was just, larger than life. And I know it didn't do well in the theaters, but as far as one of the better Batman stories that's true to really like this origin and everything, Mask of Phantasm, so I would say that's probably a maybe, because I think that's probably one of the better animated films that I've seen them ever do.
What do you think? Should we put
I agree.
this in a maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing with DC though, right? Like their live action sometimes, I mean, more often than not, doesn't hit right, but their animations are like so many like Batman Incorporated. Like there's so many great like animations that come out of like DC animated. It's unreal.
Okay.
Big Hero 6.
No.
Birds of Prey.
Definitely not.
That's in the top 5. That's 500. Top 500.
Black Adam.
Top 500.
Yeah, I got it. Sorry, Rock.
The black, and that's a bummer.
Yeah, I know.
It could have been good because he looks the part, and if they had done it correctly, it could have been really good. But
I mean, the last scene like before the credits. But good old James Gunn took care of that.
Yeah.
Now, after Black Adam comes the Black Panther. That's definitely up there. I see Black Panther heading into like at least the Sweet 16, if not much further. Wakanda Forever?
No.
That was just
it'll be forever burnt into my memory, unfortunately.
All you got to show is a picture of Namor, and that'll pretty much wrap it up for me.
Black Widow.
It was all right, but not obviously 32. But it wasn't bad.
No, it was interesting. Oh, that goes into the top 30.
I think that Blade gonna make it far.
I think that started it, man.
Yeah, if you don't have Blade, you don't have the Marvel Universe right now.
That was the first. People are like, what the heck is this? And no one really knew, if you weren't a comic head, what the hell it was.
I was sitting in the theater, And when I saw him jump across the Marvel sign, and I was the only guy in the theater, and I said, "Holy shit, that's Blade!" And like my buddy, like, "How you know that?" There's only like 4 Marvel characters that are black, man. You know, it's like,
And 2 and Trinity. 2 is okay, but it's not going to be on this list.
no. Unfortunately, no.
Bloodshot. Gonna keep going. Blue
Just
Beetle.
We're not even gonna talk about that. Keep
Gonna
going.
keep going. Bulletproof Monk.
Oh God, no.
Jeez, no. I didn't even know it was a comic book.
All right.
Yeah, it was, unfortunately.
Now we're into the seas. Captain America. Now, Winter Soldier, I think, is one of the best.
I was just gonna say,
Marvel
I think
of all time.
I think there's 2 Captain America films on here. That's Winter Soldier and Civil War.
I think
Captain America was good, but I think it doesn't. It's not the 32. I think it's
No.
top 64. It'd make
Yeah.
it, but
no. I think Winter Soldier is probably one of the best like spy thriller kind of like film. It kind of did the same thing that The Dark Knight did. It broke genre. It's not so much a superhero film, or it's more like a Cold War like spy thriller that worked itself out perfectly. And Civil War is, come on, it's the first introduction of Spider-Man that actually blew people's minds. I remember I was sitting in the theater and some guy was like, "Oh my God," and everything. Like he didn't see like the lead up to that being Spider-Man, but you know.
Well, and until Thanos, the only bad guy that ever won,
Yeah,
got exactly what he wanted.
yeah, sure.
Now, because the actual character is named Captain Marvel, but not that Captain Marvel, Shazam is the next movie on the list.
Good movie, not top 32.
Yeah.
But I actually liked the first.
it was.
Shazam.
The first one was good.
Yeah, it was good.
Second one was trash.
Yeah.
That seems to be a trend for DC films.
And then that brings us to the Marvel Captain Marvel
Yeah, no.
and the Marvels. Chet's favorite movie of last year.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah,
Box
no.
office
I've never
graveyard.
seen such a. There's nothing better out right now.
Yeah.
It's a marvelous film.
Catwoman.
Whoa, forgot
No.
about that. Dead on Arrival movie.
That's-
Atomic Blonde, which I really liked that movie. I don't think it's getting into 32.
It's
But
probably
it's
in top
good.
100, but yeah, you know. But then here's the point: I didn't even know it was a comic book until
It
they
was
basically-
based on The Coldest City by
Yeah.
Oni Press.
Okay, yeah, I never would have known that.
Constantine, Keanu Reeves.
Oh, I love that movie. I don't know if it's top 32, but I do love that movie.
It is. It has its moments.
But I don't think it's top 32.
But I think this one it would be like the top 60s.
But
It would
yeah.
be in there.
I mean, maybe put it as a maybe.
It's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was one of the first to come out that was different. I think it was different in a way where anybody that wasn't into comics would have no idea that it was based off of
Exactly.
comics. Right. Was that the first Vertigo film? I think it was, right?
No, I don't know if it
No,
was
what did V for Vendetta come out first?
I think it did. Yes.
Yeah, V for Vendetta came out before
Was it?
Constantine, I think.
Okay. How do I spell Constantine to your con?
With this C and then Statine.
Time.
Okay.
Cowboys
Statine.
Whatever.
and aliens.
No, that's not even in. That's not even the top 500.
There was so much potential for that, but no.
Yeah. Especially with Jon Favreau, too.
Yeah.
That's what kind of hurts the most. You've got Indiana Jones, James Bond in a Jon Favreau movie, and you can't make that work.
Yeah, you messed that up. So
They should have called that Cowboys versus Aliens versus Studio Executives. Because
Yeah.
That's why that film bombed.
Yeah.
The Crow.
It's not it for me.
That definitely makes it.
Daredevil. Because I'm skipping over City of Angels and Salvation
Yeah,
of
no,
The
no,
Crow.
no,
Eh,
no,
that's-
those-
no.
There's only one crow that was good.
Daredevil, Ben Affleck.
No, sorry, Ben.
The best Daredevil, right?
The only way that film would have been watchable is if I actually wore the Daredevil mask into the theater.
If I was blind.
Yes, it would have been good. Just had popcorn and kind of heard the movie.
Yeah, it sounds great. I don't have to see them on a seesaw. I don't think DC League of Super Pets is really counting.
No.
It beats the Marvel stuff.
I mean, it's up there.
Deadpool.
Oh yeah,
Deadpool.
Yeah,
I
the
think.
first Deadpool makes it. Yeah,
And Deadpool 2, no.
I think it's in the top 50, but I don't think it's
Yeah, it didn't make
gets to the
32.
Yeah. Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
And Doctor Strange in the Multiverse.
I think Doctor Strange, the
madness.
first one, makes it.
Multiverse is
It's not bad, but it's probably
not
top 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't real thrilled with the America character. Whatever the hell that was.
American
That
Chavez.
didn't make much sense. Elektra.
No.
Speaking of Daredevil. Eternals. Also a
Nope.
big, terrible, terrible, terrible thing. Extraction 1 and 2. That was based on a comic.
Extraction makes it.
Oni Press again.
But damn, I'm almost hard not to say Extraction 2 either, because both of those movies were pretty bitching.
Well, and because 2 like amped up all that action.
I did, man.
Was the comic book called Extraction?
I think
it was. Yeah, that's what they have down here. It says Extraction Oni Press.
I say Extraction 1 and 2 makes it, man.
I don't know.
It
Man.
just changed the.
I would give you Extraction 1.
Okay.
I would put it because Extraction
you think
1
Extraction 2 maybe goes in top 50.
Well, I mean, no, I think Extraction 2 is a contender for a spot in 32, but we would have to see if there's anything better. Like I would put an asterisk by it to see if anything knocks it out. But I will give you Extraction 1 absolutely goes in the top 32.
Well, we're at 16 and we're gonna run out of room, so there's definitely gonna be
I say
one need to be punted.
I will definitely say I would give Extraction 1 the absolute end. You know, we can punt.
We'll see.
2.
We'll see once we get to 32, then we'll see how many more we need to add. Yeah.
Fantastic Four. And Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer.
No Fantastic Four movies.
The Flash.
No.
From Hell.
No, I think it's a good film, but it's definitely it's a hard.
It's a terrible adaptation. It's nothing like the book.
Yeah, it's a hard read, man.
Ghost Rider. And Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance.
Yeah, Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance.
Now we start doing a box office graveyards, the worst comic book films. There's a lot of
Ghost Rider, Ghost Ride the Whip. That was number 3.
Ghost World.
That was good, but
32. It was like watchable.
Yeah. Green Lantern. Ryan
Not
Reynolds.
watchable.
No.
Not watchable.
Now, this is a controversial one. Guardians of the Galaxy.
I don't think any
1,
of
2,
the
and
Guardians,
3.
I don't think
the
any
first
of them
one
makes the top
belongs.
32.
You're crazy.
The first one
I
does belong.
I absolutely.
You're outnumbered.
do not.
You're outnumbered.
I absolutely do not. I would say this to James Gunn's face. I thought all of them were average. And I have not seen any of them that I thought was mildly entertaining more than the other box office. And I would say that to his face, sitting across a table from him, knowing that I would not get a job from him.
I think I would put I can see what you're talking about as far as Guardians of the Galaxies, but like I got to give Guardians of the Galaxy number 1 like the spot because the big thing about that one was like everyone was talking about how the movie's basically written around the songs. So I think there was a lot to it. I think it actually brought to light. It did what I think DC tried to do, where it took a lot of like unknown Marvel characters and made them a success. And so I think that's where it is. But I think that they got lazy in the second and then super lazy in the third.
Yep.
All right. Heavy Metal. I forgot that was the old
The 82 or something.
Yeah.
Like,
81.
I wouldn't put it in top 32.
no.
All right. Hellboy.
Yes,
Which one?
first, the only one,
Yeah, Hellboy
Wow.
2, The Golden Army, not so much.
and then the
One of
other
the
one,
worst endings, freeze frame, no less, of that movie. I hate that end.
What was the other one they tried to the
That was the
redo?
David Harbour one. That
Yeah,
was
just Hellboy as well.
yeah, yeah. And they're doing the third Hellboy with the same people that wrote the David Harbour one again. So we'll see that one. That sounds like a roaring success. It's going to be popular.
It's gonna be Hellbomb.
Yeah.
Hellboy.
Radical Comics Hercules.
No,
Dwayne
Nope.
Johnson.
No.
Not even close.
it's
Okay.
top
Hey.
1,000.
A History of Violence.
I think History of Violence.
Good movie.
Well, you know, it's good. I don't know. As we started debating on it today, I don't know if it makes it to top 32. I think it's a good film. I read the actual comic itself or the graphic novel, but I don't. I don't think it makes it to the list. I think it's a critical film. If you're talking about top 50, yes, but not top 32.
All
Agree.
right. Well, this one's going straight to the top. Howard the Duck.
Oh, that's got to be number one.
On the box office graveyard, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Howard the Duck takes 19, 20, and 21. It deserves 3.
Hulk. The Incredible Hulk.
None of the Hulks.
None of them.
No Ang Lee.
No.
No Ang Lee.
Ang
no
Lee
Spike
was
Lee, no.
Ang Lee's like the least of that, man. The Hulk was like 43 different sizes in that movie.
I would have loved to see Edward Norton's cut. See if that was any good, but none of them make it.
I liked The Incredible Hulk. The end just gets a little typical smash up monster kind of thing, but I liked a lot of it. I, Frankenstein.
No.
Iron Man.
Iron Man, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Number 1.
Uh-huh.
I don't think 2's not that great, and 3 is
Three's a Pepsi
better.
commercial.
I like 3 though.
Entertaining popcorn movies, but not great films.
Yeah. Joker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonah Hex.
No.
Yeah.
Put that with Cowboys and Aliens is like you had something
No,
there and you blew
Jonah
it.
Hex was like legitimately much worse than Cowboys. and
Yeah,
Aliens.
I think they're about the same.
Oh, I don't know.
Why is it
They're
about
about the
westerns?
same.
They just can't get like Wild Wild West and Jonah Hex. Like they just
Yeah.
can't get it right. Like the,
Because they don't want to write it true to what it needs to be true to,
Western.
like
Yeah.
at all. Yeah.
Like imagine Clint Eastwood was going to star in it back in the day
Oh,
and
so
write it that
good.
way.
yeah,
Oof. Josie and the Pussycats.
no.
Nope.
Judge Dredd or Dredd?
I don't think any of the.
I thought
Definitely
Dredd
not
was.
Stallone.
I thought Dredd was good, but not 32.
Yeah. Justice League. We got 2 different cuts. Zack Snyder's actually might be on this
I
list.
say Zack Snyder's is maybe pushing to the 32, but I don't think it makes it 32.
I'm gonna put it on here because I know it'll probably get punted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kick-Ass. 1 and 2.
No,
No.
good books.
They were great books. They were fun. They were fun to watch, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
They might be top graveyard.
Mm.
Kingsman.
Oh, that's a
Oh,
good movie.
1 and 2.
Yeah,
And
but I still don't
prequel.
think it makes it to the
It's
top.
not 32, but it's a good film. The first
Yeah.
one was really good.
Yeah, this again, I just have problems with Mark Miller's writing on a lot of things. And the end of that was definitely one of those things. Okay. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Nope.
Great book. Nothing in
That
that
w-
book is in the movie.
No.
The Losers.
No.
No.
I liked the movie.
I thought the
Maybe
book
only
was
one.
fantastic, another good Vertigo book, but I think it just didn't translate well to the screen.
Mm-hmm.
The Mask.
Ooh,
Jim Carrey.
that's fun, but it's not top 32.
Think it's in the top 100 though, but yeah, I don't think it makes the 32.
Men in Black. 1, 2, 3, and International.
Again, I think that the first one kind of can make it
MIB,
into 100,
man, is good.
but I don't think I would put it in the top 32, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Monkey Bone.
No.
Morbius.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Mystery Men.
Definitely not. No.
No.
It's a fun film.
So funny.
But yeah, it just doesn't make it into that though.
The New Mutants.
Definitely not.
You remember that came out?
I do. I do.
And I remember when it disappeared.
Yeah.
Yes. Oblivion. I didn't know that was a comic book.
I really like that movie, actually. I don't know, a lot of people didn't like it.
I don't think it
was
makes it
good.
into the top 32.
No,
but
it's not.
Top 100 is there.
The Old Guard.
Oh.
Charlize
Now,
Theron.
see, I liked the movie. I thought they left a lot of meat and potatoes out of it. I don't think it makes the top 32, but it's a watchable film.
Punisher. We
No.
got
The movie?
some Dolph Lundgrens. We got some Thomas Janes.
Although
Sitting through that is enough punishment.
Yeah,
Well,
if rest in peace to Ray Stevenson, but I've got to say that I thought that the Punisher, I think was
Warzone?
that Warzone was worse than the Dolph Lundgren version.
Yeah.
Like wow, man.
All right. Oh, well, and it's getting worse. R.I.P.D.
Oh no,
Oh,
that was
Jeff
exactly
Bridges.
this,
What are you
yeah.
doing?
That's a bummer.
He's making the mortgage payment.
hey, that could have been a really good.
That's what it was.
What the RIPD was?
And they
that,
made a sequel to that too.
Dark Horse.
Yeah.
That was it was Dark Horse.
Yeah, but who was the writer on that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if anybody took credit for that.
Liefeld.
Let's see.
Maybe this is gonna be easier than I thought. There's a lot of hell no's on
No,
this.
there's a lot of bad movies. There's like this is the reason why the top 32 actually we nailed
Based
it down.
on the comic book by Peter Lenkoff.
Yeah, I don't know who he is.
Okay. Red and Red 2.
I think the first Red was a funny film. I think it's top 100. I don't think it's top 32, but
Yeah.
it's a very good film.
Yeah.
Red 2 was not so much.
No, that was just cash cow right there.
Red Sonja.
Well, no.
Gonna keep going. Richie Rich.
Macaulay Culkin.
Road to Perdition.
I think the Road to
I
Perdition.
love this
Absolutely, it has a. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't that the last Academy Award nomination for? I can't even remember.
Paul Newman.
Paul Newman. I think it was the last time he got a Academy Award nomination, and it was most deserved. Tom Hanks is phenomenal in that movie, and it made me go out and purchase the graphic novel.
It's Spielberg, right?
I don't think
that's
Spielberg directed that. That's what's his name? The guy
that did the Bond movies.
Yeah.
I
I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
It's killing me too.
He also did wasn't it the American what was it?
American Beauty.
American Beauty.
Sam
yeah.
Mendes.
Sam Mendes. Yeah, I could tell that music.
Mhm.
Some of the
Yeah.
sequences, the rain. I'm okay
And-
leaving it in here.
And Daniel Craig in one of his first movies. which
Exactly.
Never thought he was British. Watching that movie. All right. The Rocketeer. I love myself, The Rocketeer.
I love The Rocketeer. I don't know if it makes the top 32. I think it does make the top 50. I don't know if it makes the top because I think it's just, look, it's probably one. Look, I love it every time it's on. I think it's a good film for Dave Stevens' legacy, and they took that artwork and they moved it to the screen extremely well. I think it's definitely a Disney movie. When Disney Plus first came in, I remember that was the very first film I watched.
It makes it it made it before the Captain American Avengers movies came out,
Mhm.
and I think like it's the genre has taking it up another level. So I
Mhm.
think probably top 50, 60, but not
Mhm.
32 for me.
That's also another Captain America. Joe Johnson directed that, The
Mhm.
Rocketeer. So you know,
Yeah, very similar style too.
hmm
Samaritan, which was the Sylvester Stallone movie.
Yeah,
Did any of you guys see that?
Yeah,
I
it's
did.
good.
I just saw it.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah,
It was
not 32, but
no,
yeah.
no, it's not up there. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
no.
I like it
32.
very much, but yeah, it's not top 32. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
I thought that was one of the better MCU films outside the Avengers, to be honest with you. It's not top 32, but that was probably one of the better ones that recently had come out.
I think Ben Kingsley makes that movie completely entertaining. But I thought that Aquafina's performance in that movie was just, he didn't need the silly sidekick. I thought that really hurt that film.
Sheena.
No.
She's the queen of the jungle.
Sheena, warrior princess.
Sin City.
I think Sin City most definitely. Just not just on just movie cinematic stylings. And it's almost as good as 300, where it's like it's ripped off the page.
Yeah, and it looks good. It's not ridiculous. Spawn.
Oh yeah. I'm just kidding.
I think unfortunately Spawn makes it to the box office graveyard.
I mean, it's got to be top 32, right? I mean, they make so many toys after it.
Now we're into the Spider-Mans.
Yeah.
You know?
1, 2, 3, Amazing. Amazing 2, Homecoming, Into the Spider-Verse, Far From Home, No Way Home, Across the Spider-Verse.
I say from Spider-Man 2, because I think that's a very good film, completely different direction. I think that legitimized Tobey Maguire's. I would say probably Into the Spider-Verse, because it's so completely different than anything I've ever seen. And then I would probably say the last one, No Way Home, was just the bridging of the multi. Yeah. That's the only time I saw the multiverse work right, and it redeemed a lot of the Sony characters. Yeah. So if you had those three would make it for me.
I thought Far From Home was good too. Like I like that.
I think it is, but I think it's
was that the one with Sandman? Was that the yeah? That was a good one too. All the Spider-Man for the
no, that was the one with Mysterio.
Yeah.
Yes, Mysterio. Sandman was
that was in the multiverse one.
Multiverse. Yeah, those two were good for Jake Gyllenhaal was actually a pretty good Mysterio. Like I was surprised. I would be okay with Spider-Man 2. I would be okay with the No Way Home. I would argue that Far From Home maybe, and then I think Across the Spider-Verse too. I mean, it's a lot of Spider films, but they were all really, really good.
Yeah, well done.
Well, I think we're agreement on Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man No Way Home. Are we in agreement on
Into the Spider-Verse? Most definitely.
Yeah, I'm good with all those. And I think just keep typing, because the Spirit goes right into that.
No, it does not. The Spirit is just like the apparition. It's disappeared itself.
Dr. Brantley, you missed Dick Tracy, by the way. That was not announced in the D's category, so I was a little upset.
Not on this list.
I think Dick Tracy makes it into the top 60, maybe. Because especially
I love
style.
That. I like
I think the style.
Yeah, I guess Chester Gould was before they did the serials.
Yeah.
I thought it was. As a kid, I loved that. I collected all the action figures, and I know like it was
really.
It's kind of like
I was
Batman
in that film
with like
it was that style
colors, But I think that the whole Pope thing didn't work out as well in Dick Tracy compared to how they did Gotham City in that. But I still think I think it's in the top top 60 of all films. So I think Warren Beatty does a phenomenal job directing and acting in that film.
Now, this has SpongeBob as a comic character, but I don't think he was a comic book character
he wasn't.
before.
He was in comics, but a cartoon was the original.
Yeah. So that's the same people that left off Dick Tracy, okay? So Steel.
Shaq. No.
Yep.
Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad. I liked The Suicide Squad. Starro was cool.
I heard the video game's pretty good, huh, Chet?
I've heard.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that sometime.
Supergirl.
Nope.
No.
How about Superman?
Of course.
Yeah.
The Christopher Reeve version, absolutely.
Number 1, yes.
Yeah.
That's about it.
You don't
that
think
advertisement. You know what? While
Man of Steel?
I think Man of Steel is good. I don't think it's the top 32 wise, but I think out of all the other Superman films, it's the only one that I can put in the same category as that. I sitting in the theater with it, I felt just as good as watching Christopher Reeves and Henry Cavill, and it was such a major letdown that they never got around to another Superman film, because I thought all the actors, I think Amy Adams is fantastic. I think there's so many great elements about that, and it's such a shame we won't ever get to see that again.
Swamp Thing. Return of Swamp Thing.
No.
Tales from the Crypt movies. That's going to be a no. Tank Girl.
Oh
No.
I liked the comic. I actually read the comic. I was
Comic
so
is
disappointed going in to see that movie.
Yeah, that movie was a dumpster fire.
Oh. And what the hell's Ice-T? He still has to explain that.
Yeah, well, you know.
Just a name to sell the movie.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
You
Now,
talking about the original
the
one?
original, there's The Secret of the Ooze.
I think the
3
original,
Turtles in Time.
The first one.
I think the first one makes it.
I know
only
it's
because
cheesy, but it's just so classic. It's so great.
But
cultural, brother. It captures the world, bro.
And
Yeah,
they did a great job with the costumes, man. I love that it was like
Jim Henson too.
Yeah.
If you were if you were to look at, like, that's one of my all-time favorite movies, by the way. But if you were to look at and use the same costumes in current version of a Ninja Turtles movie, it would be better than the other Ninja Turtles movies that have come out. And the only reason why number 2 sucked was because when the first one came out, a bunch of moms got pissed off and complained that they were too violent, which is why in the preceding Ninja Turtle movies, they didn't use their weapons.
That's interesting.
So like a bunch of like angry moms ruined that whole franchise.
Yep.
Classic.
I remember. And then there's the animated TMNT.
Now that actually was pretty good, but not in the top. Not top 13.
Then,
but it was actually
reboots
pretty good though.
And Mutant Mayhem.
That'd make it in like the top 3,200.
Yeah, probably so.
No, Mutant Mayhem can. No.
Thor. We got
Thor.
Thor.
No.
Thor Ragnarok is the only one that makes it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked Ragnarok.
I think it was pretty good.
Man, if they only had.
Can you believe though that he was Tiki was a one-hit wonder because he did Ragnarok and the next film was
They
terrible.
came
Love
that,
and
and it's
Thunder.
one of the worst films I've ever seen.
Time Cop.
No.
Jean-Claude Van Damme's best movie.
It is his best movie, but that's saying a lot that the guy's done 50 films.
I guess you haven't seen Kickboxer or Bloodsport, Dr. Brantley.
Yeah.
I have. Time Cop is still his best movie because it was an actual movie.
Who's the
Hey,
bad guy in
Time Crisis.
Cop?
Time Crisis was a pretty good game.
Let's see here. V for Vendetta.
I think it's a top 100. I don't think it makes it.
No.
Venom.
No.
1 or 2.
No.
I actually worked on the trailer for this movie. Virus.
No.
Terrible.
He's so upset.
Wanted.
No.
Could have been good. Good book.
Yeah.
Terrible
They would have
movie.
followed the book more. Yeah.
Or at all.
Yeah, exactly. Or
And got
Watchmen.
Eminem to play the damn character that would have solved all the issues. Watchmen, yeah.
Watchmen.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. It's the reason why Zack Snyder still making movies.
And again, he makes these movies that are so for theaters, but then when he releases his director's cut and what he would have put in or tried to put in, it's like, oh, this is so much better.
I think Snyder is one of the better directors. I think he has a problem with time management, and I think that destroys. I think Nolan grasped that, and I think Snyder hasn't. And I think because when you're looking at like a 6-hour Justice League cut, you're like, my God, like, who goes into that? And then like Nolan had that problem, and Nolan's learned how to manage time a lot better.
I think Snyder should write him while Nolan directs him.
Exactly.
Now,
The
this
final
is
two.
just based on, I guess, the name of the comic, because it had nothing to do with the comics. Weird Science.
No.
Good movie, but no.
Yeah.
Whiteout.
No.
Now we have the Wolverine movies. Origins. I'm going to say no.
No,
on that.
definitely not.
But the
Logan.
Wolverine and Logan is
Logan
something to talk
for
about.
sure.
Logan.
I think the Wolverine makes the top 100, but I think Logan is definitely.
Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Ooh, I think Wonder Woman does kind of make that.
Yeah.
Not 1984. But
No,
the first one.
That's it. The first one.
And then to end it all, the X-Men. So, yeah, I mean, we got X-Men, X2. The Last Stand is nowhere near this. So I think X2 and First Class and Days of Future Past might have, all three of those might have a shot on this list.
I would say X2 and Future Past for me.
I would say that, but no shit, I don't know what I'm taking. All right, let me look at the.
But what are you taking off to put one on?
I know that's what I'm looking.
Well, I'm
at
gonna.
here.
So do we agree though? Does X-Men have the X-Men 2
does.
have a place?
It does have a place.
And does any of the other?
And I think Days of Future Past. I would say Days of Future Past, like almost kills.
Is that the end? Is that all the movies?
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Up to the X. I got no Y or Z's.
I've got to say, if I'm looking at on the board right here, what comes off is it's probably between like maybe Constantine, possibly Extraction, or one of the Spider-Man films.
I'd even say Hellboy, just because the movie is not as good as the books.
I say Days of Future Past was probably one of the best X-Men films that they did, even better than I thought. Like, coming out of like First Class, you're like, okay, wow. And then Days of Future Past, like you just blended it in. I think you're right, man. I think I would get rid of Hellboy. I know X-Men 2 was way better than Hellboy. And Days of Future
hurts
Past.
me to do it, but yeah.
I think, would
you do Hellboy over the Crow?
I would not. I would do the Crow over Hellboy.
I'm debating whether or not Snyder Cut belongs in the top 32.
Yeah.
Well, 6 hours, damn it.
If you need 6 hours to tell your story, you don't belong in the 32.
No, but let me tell you something. It was the first film that I ever sat in. It was 6 hours that didn't feel like 6 hours. And that's what I was amazed about. It moves. It has great arcs and something. Maybe it's a more art house. But I would tell you something. I would cut Hellboy out of the top 32 for an X-Men movie.
Well, we need to cut 2. So for cutting Hellboy, I don't know.
Let's see.
Seventeen, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23.
Again,
I could maybe take Thor Ragnarok off.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I like this. I like the Snyder Cut, but it's like
It is.
It's on this list, and it took 6 hours to get on this.
Yeah, I don't know if it survives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can take it off. I think Zach doesn't make the cut. He's already on it with 300, and so he's got to take that in for himself.
And Watchmen.
Yeah, so yeah.
So,
yep.
Let's see. Okay, so do we have our final 32?
I'm actually good with that 32, man.
So,
other than Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm great with all the rest of the shit.
Just have to do it so I mean, at first, I don't think like the Batmans or the X-Men's can attack each other or the Avengers. But it's going to get down to that at some point.
Yeah, it probably will.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Shadow Crew Podcast, episode 25. If we have missed something and we went through the extensive list, if you have any disagreements, if you think we're crazy to leave the Snyder Cut off or Hellboy off, or we chose the wrong Spider-Man, drop us a comment, please. Next week, we are going to put this in a 32 bracket, and we will narrow down our opinion of the best comic book film of all time. But we've got a head start, and we've narrowed down the field. I have a pretty good idea of where we will finish. And I think it'd be pretty entertaining right now to just go around predictions. What would be number one? If you had to guess. I mean, there's so many good movies, but if you had to guess who takes the prize, and it could be completely different from what you're thinking. Dr. Brantley, we'll start with you.
I got no clue because I'm looking at these and I'm like, I don't know how to pick from them. Better keep on moving. I'm just
okay.
I don't know how this is going to work out.
Mr. Chet Maddox, any thoughts where you think we might finish?
I think it'll come down. Well, like top, I'm gonna say Dark Knight.
Wow. Okay. Mr. Storm, any
I was
thoughts?
gonna say I think it was Chet and I are almost to agreement. I think it's between Batman 89 and The Dark Knight.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I think when it comes to cultural relevance, I think it comes down because like if there's no Batman 89, I don't even think we're even having this conversation. That thing basically, I remember they ran those ads on Super Bowl Sunday all the way down to June 23rd. June 23rd, I remember that, 1989. And I remember we went to the Manhattan 6 Theater in Manhattan Beach, California, and they had it shaped like the Batcave. It was the biggest spectacle I think I've ever seen in films.
And a lot of people forget that was a Tim Burton film, which is why it was so freaking whimsical. It was like it was very good. But I think the battle is going to be.
I think it's between those two, man.
I'm going to say a little bit different. I think, and again, we're going to do this bracket challenge. It could go either way. I think there's two movies that are going to be in the upper echelon of this contest. One is the conclusion to the best ever story in comic book film history, and that's Avengers Endgame. And I think that's going to wind up in some of the top. And I think the best damn debut ever of a comic book character and one of the best films of all time in Black Panther is definitely going to be up there as well. I don't think you can forget about Impact, still number one on Rotten Tomatoes. As best film and iconic, like talk about like setting the tone moving forward with like soundtracks and like coolness of a comic book character. But we'll see. That's why we do the bracket challenge. But lots of damn good movies here, so I'm curious to see what finishes.
You really like Endgame, even though they didn't stay true to like Thanos.
Yeah, I think I think that it to me is the perfect conclusion to a long running saga. And basically, at the end, we've talked about it in previous casts. Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man's dead, killed the MCU, and that was like the perfect conclusion because anything after that has been terrible. So, before we adjourn, let's thank our sponsor, Mr. Storm, for this week's episode.
We do. We like to thank Toys versus Games in Wilmington, California. If you're in California, especially the Wilmington area, you definitely want to stop in at the store. They're a sponsor for a reason. We don't just put sponsors up because they pay us all the time and they jump to the top of the list. We want to actually have sponsors that we believe in. And if you go to, your Walmarts, your Targets and everything, you can see how it is when you go to a corporate store. You're going to Toys versus Games. It matters a lot to them because they're the people that behind the counter are the people that own the store. So when you want to make your purchases for action figures, you want to have somebody that you can talk to for a little while, not somebody just rushing out the door for the other people behind. Go to Toys versus Games and tell them that the Shadow Crew sent you.
Awesome. We got lots of content on our various platforms, from unboxing, toy unboxing, to toy reviews, to the best of series, to retrospect series. More content to come from Mr. Chet Maddox, Dr. Brantley, Mr. Storm. Also, big, hot, relevant news in the professional wrestling industry with Royal Rumble that's just passed. A new video was posted on Royal Rumble predictions and outcomes. And not to spoil anything, but it looks like WrestleMania is shaping up to be big. And I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but it looks like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, by the time you all are watching this, will be at WrestleMania. So I think they're trying
Family Feud.
They're trying to offset the whole Vince McMahon crisis, and why not put the most powerful man in wrestling entertainment sitting on the board at TKO than the legend himself. So big news. Follow the channel. Any last thoughts before we adjourn, gentlemen?
No, just everybody, thanks for watching. Tune in, subscribe. Like I said, it helps us beat that dirty algorithm every time it tries to keep us down and everything. If you're watching on the other cast from the different simulcasts, then subscribe there. Subscribe on the other one. The more views, the more people that tune into the channel, the more it keeps Chet Maddox flying out on those planes, man.
It's true. It's a true story.
True
And
story.
R.I.P. Mr. Weathers.
Yes, sir.
Carl Weathers. Rest in peace. Thanks all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
The Shadow Crew Podcast.